Why did the chief priests have to buy off the soldiers? It's kind of a weird line that's in the gospel. They paid them a great sum of money. Soldiers, Roman soldiers, at least I've been told, were responsible for the prisoners. They couldn't mistreat the prisoner, and if the prisoner got loose, they paid, like with their lives. So they had to be bought off. They couldn't be killed, which I'm sure is what the chief priests and all the rulers just wish. Just kill the soldiers, hush it up. Maybe I watch a lot of TV or something, Collateral damage, get rid of the ones who know anything. Let's manage this information. So who has the claim that Jesus rose from the dead? The soldiers. Kill the soldiers. Problem solved. They can't kill the soldiers. The soldiers were killed if the prisoner got loose. Well, we can't kill the soldiers because it'll look like Jesus actually got loose, got away from us, even though he was dead. Somehow he got away from us. They stole his body or he rose. Whatever the story is, all of it's a mess. So they have to pay off the soldiers. It's the only way to try to hush the story up. Meanwhile, the story can't be hushed. Going all the way back to Jonah, we heard it. I was going to say tonight because it's a Vesperal liturgy, but we're in the morning. We heard it just now. Jonah. Jonah is running away from the Lord, and he gets on a boat, and they cast lots to figure out why they're having all this trouble with the sea. Why the storm, why the trouble. And they cast lots, which I actually don't know what that is. But in Scripture, it tends to work. I don't think we're supposed to do it, but they cast lots, and it works, whatever this is. And it says that Jonah is the problem for the evil that's visiting them. So they say to Jonah, who are you? Where are you from? What are you doing on this boat? What is your story? And he says, I'm a servant of the God of gods, the Lord of lords, who the God of the sea, which I think I would have kept that part quiet if I were Jonah. He has nothing to do with water. I don't know why we have this problem. But Jonah is actually honest. He says he's the God of the land and the sea and everything. And just for our sake, we heard right before the Jonah story, the creation story from Genesis. So that we're clear on who God is, that he is the God of creation, he's the creator, he's the Lord of everything. He is the king. He's the king of everything, right? So then we hear the Jonah story, and he admits it. Yeah, my God, the God I worship, not your gods. My God, he made these. But if you'll throw me in the water, everything's going to be okay for you. Which they don't want to do because they know who he is and who his God is, and they do it anyway. And then he becomes our vision, this early kind of scene for us of what's happening today with Christ. Because just as Christ is laid in the tomb, Jonah goes into the belly of the whale. And he's there for 3 days. He's in the whale. The deacon giggled up here when it said that he was vomited out. I don't know, it just struck him funny. He's like, So that's what happens, And then Jonah and the Lord get into it. Then the next reading we have is from Daniel today. And it's the story of 3. And they are put, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they are put in a fiery furnace because they will not worship a false god. It's not even a god, and they won't worship it. Everybody else, satraps, musicians, the treasurers, all those prefects and magistrates, we have that list in the scripture, all of them will, and all of the people will, because they probably reason in their mind, it's just a gold statue, and Nebuchadnezzar's, he's a little, crazy. And he demands that we do what he says. So we just do it. It's just gold statue. Bow down, no problem. But there are 3 who are Hebrews. They are children of God, and they won't do it. And they actually have no ill will against the king. This is not a revolution or rebellion. This is, we won't do that. Well, we'll throw you in the furnace. Well, if you have to do that, that's what you have to do. But we won't, whatever happens, we won't worship the statue. Our God can save us, and even if he doesn't save us, we aren't worshiping the statue. It's up to the Lord what he wants to do, but we're not doing that. The Lord can let us die in the furnace, or Or he can save us, but that's the Lord's business. Our business is not to deny the Lord. So they get thrown in. And when we look at this day, what is happening with Christ on Saturday, we look back at these stories. We see that there's our God is the God who is over everything, made everything. That's our God. And we look back and we see Jonah, who for 3 days is in the belly of the whale. And he's wrestling with the Lord. But he's faithful to the Lord, even if he's trying to run away from him. He's still honest. And then we have the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who get thrown into the fiery furnace. And they're unharmed. It doesn't work on them. The fiery furnace worked on the guys who threw him in. I hope you heard the story. Maybe we all know it really well from childhood or just we paid attention. But those who threw them into the furnace were killed by the fire. The guys who went into the furnace, fine. Like walking around, we sing about the dew. It's like they're in a garden that's wet. That's where they are. And then there's a fourth walking with them. And the church, I'm so thankful. I have to say, converting to Orthodoxy a very long time ago now, 20 years ago or more, not 20 years ago. This is enough reason for me to be Orthodox. Holy Saturday. Because the rest of Christianity, like, they just, I don't know, shop. There's no theology of it, really. I mean, they may say that God descended among the dead, but there's no real reflection on that. And there's certainly no celebration of that, to where we are really close. I mean, like, the purple is gone, the white is out. The icon is of the resurrection. That's where we are today. We are standing right at the verge. You know, we're knocking on the stone at the tomb saying, open this, roll this back, let's see if he's in there. That's where we're standing right today. And we look back and we see that Christ, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, is put into the furnace. He's thrown into the pit. He's meant to be killed, and it doesn't work on him either. I mean, in a way it works. He does die. But it doesn't keep working. It doesn't finally work. And in fact, by his death, it starts to unravel. It actually breaks death itself. So we sang last night something that I want to read to you. Come ye, let us behold our life. Life is capitalized here. Let us behold our life, placed in a tomb to give life to those who are placed in tombs. Come, let us today behold him sleeping. Talked about naps last night. Behold him sleeping, who springeth from Judah, shouting to him prophetically, thou hast crouched and laid down like a lion. Who shall arise thee, O king, but arise by thy own power, thou who didst deliver thyself by thy own choice for our sake, O Lord, glory to thee. I underlined, thou hast crouched and laid down like a lion. Like, that's the kind of sleeping he's doing right now. Very unpredictable sleeping. You know, a lion who is crouched down is to be avoided, you know. The sleeping lion is not to be awakened. And you don't take for granted you'd ever get past him. You cannot take for granted he won't get you. Sleeping lions, crouching. Somebody says sleeping, it says crouching. We said that the Lord was put in the grave like a crouching lion is crouching. I mean, that's crazy. He is ready to strike. He is ready to get up. A crouching lion is dangerous. A crouching lion is a threat. A crouching lion is not safe at all. A crouching lion. You know, and that's what we're saying about the Lord. He lays down like a crouching lion. That's our God. We have to be aware of that. Like, keep that in mind. And that's what's happening today. That the Lord has been crucified. He has been put to death on the cross. And he's been laid in the grave. And then we start to say, what is the nature of this grave? What is the nature of the grave? It's a little bit like the furnace. It's a little bit like the whale for Jonah. Like, that's the kind of grave we're dealing with here. And what kind of manner of laying down is he doing? We look and we say, he's laying down the way lions crouch. And then we have one last thing to look at very briefly, this reading we have at baptism. And I always preach on it at baptism, so even just last Saturday, we heard this reading from Romans, St. Paul saying, we've been baptized into Christ, we've been baptized into his death. That's the kind of baptism we get. We get a baptism into death. But it's his death we want to be baptized into, because his death has flower petals and bay leaves, you know. His death it doesn't work permanently. Like, that's his death. His death is actually life. That's his death. It's full of life and flowers and redemption and salvation and standing up. That's his death. And we want to be baptized into his death. So, do you not know, St. Paul will say, that all of you who have been baptized into his death? It's like a question for us. Don't you know that? And we need to even maybe remind ourselves. We were buried, therefore, with him by baptism into death, so that, as Christ was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, we too might walk in newness of life. This walking is what we sing about Christ being risen from the dead, trampling down death by death. The trampling is the walking. That actually, I mean, depending on how you want to translate the word, we don't ever say walking. But there's a sense of walking, the trampling down. That's the walking in newness of life. I don't know what you think when you hear walk in newness of life, like, well, I'm going to do my prayers more or something, or, go to bed earlier. I'm going to walk in newness of life. But we have to have in mind that it's the trampling down death by death type of walking in newness of life. Because that's the walking we're called to do in Christ. So it's a little bit reminiscent of the priest throwing the flowers. Like, that's the kind of trampling down. It's sweet. There's victory and life and joy in it. And we leave them on the ground. It's fun when those, every year, they come in. Maybe we'll have visitors tonight or whatever. They're like, well, they didn't vacuum in this church, Because we leave them down. We'll vacuum tomorrow, no doubt. But for today, they're a reminder to us of what this trampling down is, what the walking in newness of life is, where Christ is, what it means that he's there, what kind of hold it will have on him, and what kind of laying down he's doing, this crouching like a lion. In the name of the Father, and the Son,